an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Season 1, Episode 15, Envoy from the East. In this episode, the boys still don't know that Hughes is dead. Yes, I am keeping track, and I cannot believe we are at 15 and nobody has told them yet, and they are about to bring their friend Winry back to find out the news together. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. What is up, Max? I know that you're not here at the moment, but I appreciate you. What's going on? So this episode, guys, is the beginning of a whole new thing going on with the boys. There is a guy here interfering with shit who is a prince, but also a mooch. Actually, there's no reason to use the word but, because, like, the monarchy is mooch. That's, like, their whole deal, actually. My bad. But, setting that aside, I don't know if I believe that he's a prince. Like, I mean, maybe. I'm not saying he's not a prince. I'm just saying you could just meet anybody on the street and they could just tell you all kinds of stuff about a royal family, and that doesn't mean that they're royal family also. You know, I'm just saying that, like, we need some verification. If they could get, like, an ID, maybe do, like, a quick Google search, something, they would probably be in a better situation. But these boys are a little bit too trusting. I don't know. It's just my take. So, let's start off with the very beginning of this episode where Scar fights Uncle Pennybags, aka the Monopoly Man, aka the Silver Alchemist, I think is what he calls himself. He like, I almost wanted to call him Mr. Peanut, but Mr. Peanut has a monocle and he doesn't have a monocle, although he really looks like he should have a monocle. It's kind of surprising that he doesn't. This dude is really like a whole look, and his weapons surprised me because I kind of wanted his weapons to be a little bit more, well, really, I wanted him to throw like an iron or a thimble. I wanted his weapons to be more on theme for Uncle Pennybags, but I guess we're just gonna not do that, and he's just gonna have like spearheads on chains. I don't know what you would call that kind of weapon. Actually, there's a character in One Piece who uses this kind of weapon. It's like a spearhead knife kind of thing on wire, and she spins them. And I just asked in that episode what those are called, and nobody had an answer. So I'm going to ask it again here in case anybody here has an answer. So Candace, I kind of got the impression it's not all that special. He said there's like 1 million of him. Well, there's like 24 of him or something. It's not 1 million, but nevertheless. Damien says, I forgot to watch this before. The chaos with Funimation and Crunchyroll made me blank on that. The Monopoly Man, Damien? I'm not sure what you got blanked on. A thimble could be made out of silver, says Ryan. Exactly. You know, it felt like this guy was so close to the Monopoly Man. I was waiting to see if we were just going to carry that theme right through. But it looks like not. And that's fine. But, you know, I just kind of had an idea in my head. And also, he is missing one foot, one leg. Like, it's like from his, below his knee. It is just a peg leg. Not even a silver peg leg, it doesn't look like, although I could be wrong about that. It's really kind of hard to tell because this fight is happening at night, so everything is sort of that washed out gray color. But I could see wanting to use a material like wood because I get the impression it's harder to perform alchemy on like organic, like wood is harder than metal, right? Or am I just making that up? Honestly, I can't say for sure where I even got that idea. So don't be mad at me, guys, if I'm wrong about that. I'm just throwing out my theories here. So this guy is fighting Scar with the sort of grace of a figure skater, truthfully. Like, he is really spinning around on his, like, peg leg and leaping onto the tops of posts and standing with one foot. And at the end of this fight, he says to Scar, "Not bad, you only got off with a scratch." And Scar turns to him and says, "You can't say the same." And as he says that, lightning strikes this guy's peg leg. I guess it is metal. Now that I'm looking at it, it looks like in this light it's metal. And this dude falls into the water. And for a second I was like, well, he just fell into water. I mean, he's not dead. I forgot that Scar finishes the jobs that he starts. So he jumps into the water after this guy and holds him down. And you see lightning go from his hand into this guy's fucking face. And then the camera pulls back above the surface and there's just like this red stain that slowly spreads from the spot where they are. And I was like, all right then. And then we get a new theme song. Y'all, I don't like it. It's not like a bad song or anything. It's just the original song from the first 12 episodes or whatever was just so good. It was a fucking banger. And I don't watch the opening credits because of spoilers, but I leave it on and just listen to the song while I like play Candy Crush or something. And when this started, I had a moment of like, ew, what? And like, it's like I said, it's fine. If this were the song from the beginning, I would have thought nothing of it. But because this first one is so good, I'm just really sad and I want them to bring it back. Also, it's interesting to me every time that they decide to change theme songs on shows. You know, One Piece does this quite a lot, but it's not just an anime thing. Like The Wire did every season, it was a different cover of a particular song. And I am a little bit like torn on it because on the one hand, I totally understand the urge to do something different. And on the other hand, I really like the familiarity of starting a show that I like and getting the same song that I always get and that feeling like it's part of the ritual, you know? So I don't really know where I fall on it. I think it's like, I think I would rather not. I think I'd like the same song mostly. Let's see. Erica says, that's how I felt about the original FMA theme compared to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, but the first song they had for Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood grew on me for sure. Damien says, I do enjoy that they change up the song. I think there's 4 OPs and EDs. Erica says, like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend's a little bit of an exception because the songs are like original thematic songs that go with what's going on in the story. But even then, there's like a clear winner for which theme song was the best for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And some of them were tough to sit through because they were like too long or, you know. So yeah, it's just sort of an interesting thing. I just didn't realize that I had strong feelings about it until this change in particular. And probably I wouldn't care as much if I didn't like the original song. Like, I haven't liked really any of the songs in One Piece for their openings or closers, and they changed them a lot. And I have not given any shits because I didn't really like a single one, so it was fine. So when we open the episode after the credits here, we are with Scar and his mustachioed state alchemist bud. I hesitate to use the word bud, but I don't really know what else to say. They're like allied right now. And I don't really know what the deal is still. Like, he didn't kill the guy when I really assumed that he would and sort of felt like he should. And I don't know what he's going to try and get out of him. But this dude's, the voice actor for the state alchemist, whose name I don't remember if you guys want to help, is he the same voice actor as the one who does Mr. 2 in One Piece? Because I feel like he sounds like the same guy, and I might just be, but I think it's the same dude. It sounds like it. And there's a little girl here, and she has a tiny panda riding around on her shoulder. And honestly, I am a huge fan of whenever anybody has a tiny animal that is part of their magic in some way. I don't know if the panda contributes to her magic, but I'm sort of like, mentally, I'm doing the thing where I'm conflating what's going on with her and this tiny panda with what's going on with some characters in Cradle, which if you guys haven't read Cradle, I am just begging you to please go read Cradle. Just please do it. It's just, you won't be sorry. That's all I have to say about that. But there's a whole thing with some small creatures in that. And I keep sort of doing this with her, even though it hasn't been explicitly said. And Scar comes in and is just basically like, what the fuck are you doing here? And this little girl, I don't feel like she had a great explanation. So he stumbles in, and they're staying in this like, this really busted up shell of a building. And she says, like, I was passed out on the side of the road and your master, Mr. Yoki, revived me, Mr. Yoki, okay, and brought me back here. And I love that Scar is like, oh, my master. Oh, interesting. And look, in the tradition of me continuing to be extremely skeptical, why was this guy passed out on the side of the road? She's a little girl. She didn't have anybody with her. Nobody's kept keeping an eye on her. No? And is she also an emperor's daughter? Because she's like kind of fancy. I'm just wondering what the hell her deal is. All by herself, passed out. Like, that's suspicious. That feels like if you were in Skyrim and there was a little girl just on the side of the road crying, you would go up to her and then like a bunch of bandits would jump out, or Forsworn or somebody, and it would just be a complete trap. There is no trap sprung by the end of this episode. That does not mean that there is not a trap still. We'll see. And she sees his leg and is like, oh, let me heal it. And it's like kind of amazing that she's like, I'll heal you, even though you just basically told me to get the fuck out. And she comes up to him and she makes the alchemy circle and puts down these blades with little flags tied to the handles into the circle. It's a really interesting thing that I don't think we've seen before. And then she activates it. It's like right under the side of his thigh where the wound is, and closes the wound. And him and the other dude, whose name I've already forgotten, he is Yoki. Thank you, Ryan. They are both really, really shocked that she can do this in a way that suggests to me that healing alchemy is like either unheard of or just really rare, or maybe they're reacting to the fact that she's super young and able to do this, or all of the above. Oh, yay, Ziggy in the comments says, I read Cradle on your recommendation and can agree that it's great. Fist pump. So this moment of the two of them are just like, oh my God. And she says that it's a type of, what is it? They have a different word for it, but it sounds like it means the same thing. Here, it doesn't sound like it means the same thing. Alkahestry, from the land of Xing. And that's apparently like across the desert. It is quite a journey once we actually get to see it on the map. But that's right. She says, I wasn't alone. I had her with me too, about the tiny panda. And I'm just like, again, that's just sort of a weird thing. And when she says, I had her with me, Scar stares at the panda, and all of this electricity is like behind him in a, it can be hard sometimes because weird shit will actually happen on this show. And sometimes it's unclear to me if the thing that's being animated is what's actually happening, or if it's meant to be a representation of some emotion the character is having. Because this, he emits electricity. That's part of what he's doing to people with his alchemy. But this looked like it was just supposed to be shock, I think. And he reaches towards the panda, and it's a weird, he reaches towards it, but then when she turns around, she spots his tattoo, and his arm just stays out. I was really, really confused by this, you guys. It looked for all the world like he's trying to reach out for her pet in a way that's almost like he recognizes this animal, or it means something to him in a way that felt significant. It went when it turns and looks at him, it's did it take control of him somehow? I don't know. So he reaches out towards her, and then, she turns around and his arm is out, and she just comes and investigates it and sees that he has alkahestry tattoos all over his arm. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be that because it is alkahestry and that's what she's doing, that the panda controlled his arm. It's just such a weird moment. Oh, everybody in the chat is saying that he was just overwhelmed with the urge to pet it. And it was shocking to him that he was felt warm feelings towards an adorable animal. Sir, God, you really need therapy. So power that flows through the ground and how to use it. That tattoo matches the flow of alkahestry used in my homeland. And he says, my brother was a student of alkahestry and alchemy, and he conducted a great deal of research into both fields. The tattoo I bear is a result of that research. And so, okay, no, it sounds like it's two different things here. Alkahestry and alchemy, unless it's just it is a different name for alchemy, but there's also different, because when we are with Ed and that prince and they're talking about it, it seems like they are talking about alchemy just being used in a completely different way because it's more to do with medicine. So maybe it's just you know what I mean? The completely separate applications of it. You can have chemistry that's about that, similarly, about medicine. It's about things that you ingest for healing. And then you can have chemistry that's how to make a fucking bomb. Maybe that's all they're doing there. And she says, wow, your brother must really have been something. And he just stares straight ahead and does not answer or look at her or do anything. And I was like, man, you really need to, this is a child, look, I totally agree. This is extremely suspicious. I'm not mad at you for that. But also you could just make yourself a little friendlier. I mean, if you think that she's up to no good, it's probably better to let her think that she's getting to you somehow. But anyway, I love this bit. She gets in an argument with Yoki, and her panda bites him and really goes for it. And we have this moment of her talking about somebody that she's looking for while he fights with her teeny tiny panda behind her. And this is really good for me. I just really enjoy whenever there's somebody being sort of calm about something and in the background there's wild shit going on. Let's see. Erica says, I might be wrong, but it feels like it's engineering versus physics. They have a lot in common, but aren't exactly the same. Okay, interesting. Tony says she's 13 years old, in case you were wondering. She feels like an infant. What? She's only 2 years younger than the boys? She's 5. That feels crazy. Oh, Tony says, sorry, it was wrong around 10. Okay, that's slightly better, but still, it's just, she reads as way younger than that still. Damien says Mei Chang's VA is one of the actresses who was in the original FMA in a different role because Funimation ensured all the FMA VAs got to come back in some way. Okay. Candace is laughing at my use of an infant, but like seriously, she's so small and her voice is just very, very childlike. I don't know. But anyway, she is here to find Edward. And in her head, Edward is like a K-pop star and obviously a lot taller, a lot suaver. I love that his hair is in this like long braid and his eyes are sparkling and there's rose petals blowing past him. And it's really a whole vibe. And I'm like, look, girl, if that was really what it looked like, I wouldn't even be mad at you, but you are about to be disappointed. He is like the same height as you and very angry all the time. So yeah, she's over here just freaking out about this. And Yoki says, what do we do about her? And Scar is just like, all right, fine. And she hops on this like cart as they head towards the Capitol. Then we go to a scene where one of the murderers from that experimental station that got burned down is attacking a woman in the street. Is this Hawkeye? They keep changing her hair and I keep getting so fucking confused because honestly, like she looks a little bit generic in general. So just changing her hair, like anime does this with women characters a lot where they will just have the same exact face, but they'll have slightly different hair. And so now they're a totally different character, even though they definitely are not a totally different character. So every time I see her, I'm like, okay, I think this is Hawkeye, but then I don't know for sure. Okay. Everybody is saying that it is. Tony says she's off duty. Look, whether she's on duty or not, they do go all over the place with what her hair's doing. So I just feel like it's unnecessarily confusing. Just have her have that like short cut and keep it. That was like very distinctive and it looked really military. I don't know. I liked it. I felt like it was I don't know. I liked it. I miss it. So this fucking dude comes out and is like, I'm coming after you now, the most feared serial killer. And as soon as he comes out, I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that this guy is out there still alive. And he raises his cleaver and he announces that he's buried the chopper. And she just unleashes her fucking pistol on him. And like, you know, he is made out of metal, so it shouldn't actually really do that much, but you know, it's gonna startle him. He goes down and then he like lifts his head and says, now I'm gonna hear you scream. And he lifts the helmet up expecting that she's gonna see that there's nobody inside the suit of armor and be like, oh my God. But instead she's like, oh. And he's waiting for her reaction and there isn't one. And he's just like, well, and then she just pulls the trigger again and shoots the helmet. That got me. I won't lie. That shit was so funny. Just the moment of like a pause, him waiting, and then her just being like, pop again. That's a whole fucking mood, girl. So yeah, this is when he's like, why are you not paralyzed with fear? And she's like, I've met somebody like you before. And he says, oh, let me guess. Was it Al? And she's like, wait, how do you know Al? And he starts cackling and is like, ha ha, oh, he's a friend of yours, is he? I'm gonna tell you something, sweetheart. And then you're one strong woman. And he's surrounded by hearts. Men never changes. So we go to the holding area that he's being kept in and questioned by Roy. They're all these separate little like sheds. It almost looks like a like self-storage compound sort of thing, but it seems like it's either interrogation rooms or like prison cells or something. And they are asking him, he's like chained up on the floor And you know what? I'm realizing we go inside and there's a bunch of like crates and stuff. So this is clearly like off the books. This is not supposed to be happening. But yeah, Roy is like asking him about the different people who have been involved with what's going on, and is talking about lust and envy, and they're the ones that made you into this. And he's like, no, researchers did that. They ripped out my soul and slapped it into this suit of armor. And they want to track down the researchers and figure out who ordered the experiments. And 66 says, fat chance, they were all used to create philosopher's stones. There's not a single one of them left alive. And I was like, that's pretty efficient, actually. Like, you know, I mean, it's just good policy to kill the people who are involved in your like secret experiments, but it's even better if their deaths serve those experiments. That's actually very tidy. Like, nice job, whoever set that up. I'm assuming father. I don't know. And they're trying to figure out whether, like, there's a chance for more stones to be made. Like, are they working on something somewhere else? And then Hawkeye asks this dude, somebody we know was killed in a phone booth recently. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? And I cannot tell you how much I loved Barry's response. He doesn't just say no. He says, doesn't sound familiar. Was he all chopped up? And I just love the idea that this guy is out here murdering so many people that he can't really be sure that he wasn't involved. So he has to ask for details because he's like, I mean, I don't know, man. I cut up a lot of people. You're going to have to get a little bit more specific than that. Barry, sir, you really do. Like, somebody needs to wipe off that fucking, that blood rune or whatever and just set his soul free, because this is not a man that should be fucking walking around. And I don't know what they actually wind up doing with him, because we just see Roy realizing it's not him and closing his notebook. And I think probably you don't want to get rid of this guy because he could still be like a font of information. But I wouldn't be mad if they were like, all right, this interview is over and now we will wipe your rune and execute you again, kind of. So this, then we go over to an atelier where Winry is working. And I was really surprised by this because Winry, it turns out, wants to go with them to the capital. But first, of course, she sees that Edward has damaged his automail again. And we have this moment of her, like, with a smile on her face. But then she's, like, shrunk down into the corner of the screen. And behind her is, like, an angry statue of, like, one of the demons that guards the Buddha holding a weapon and looking really angry as flames, like, dance around him. And honestly, I feel like when I get angry in the future, I am going to be imagining that moment in my head, because that just feels really on point to me. That whole just like, oh, God, I really hope you fucking die. Like, you know, Winry is delightful. So yeah, she's talking about how Panini has decided to fix her life and she's doing odd jobs and she stopped picking pockets. And then she asks the two of them if they have made any progress on the Philosopher's Stone. And Al is like, a little, but it's really slow going. Ugh. Excuse me, guys. I'm not bored. I hate when I yawn for no reason. This makes me sound like I'm like, this is so tedious. It's not. I promise. I really like this show. So yeah, she says that she's missing some parts, so Ed's going to have to make do with a patch job. And until then, you've got some time to kill. And Ed is just kind of like, I mean, there's nothing to do around here. which honestly, it is kind of surprising to me that Ed hasn't learned anything about how to do any repairs himself. And I feel like maybe he should apply himself a little bit more because he's a fucking alchemist. Sir, is that just me? You know what I mean? We see them like repairing mechanical stuff all the time. And yet it doesn't even seem like he makes an effort to try. And I don't know if it's just because the narrative needs there to be a separate mechanic for the story. And so we can't have him be able to repair himself because that would be too easy. Or maybe if it's like implanted in the skin, he can't affect it. Like that's a thing in Mistborn. People can like push and pull on metals, but if they are like an earring through the ear, anything that's got any sort of like depth into the skin, you can't fuck with it from the outside. So I don't know. Ryan says he probably could learn some more, but then again, I don't know anything about repairing my car. Yeah, but Ryan, your whole job isn't like making car parts. Not that his is making automail parts, but like he can make anything out of metal. You know what I mean? I don't know. Tony says, so you want him to have skills in physics and chemistry as well as engineering. Well, it seems like he does already. Doesn't he? Like they repaired that radio. I don't know. It's just like they've managed to fix things. It seems like it would be part of the same parcel. I don't know. But the whole thing here is them walking around trying to figure out something to do. And Al disappears and Ed turns around and is like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, did you find a stray cat or something? Well, no. And he holds up this dude who is, I guess, slumped over in the alley. I don't really, this is too similar to this other girl. She's like, oh, I was just passed out on the side of the road. And this guy's like, oh, I was just passed out on the side of the street. Were you? Because that's weird. What? Okay. So this guy says his name is Ling and sits down and they have eaten a bunch of food and he is insisting that this is Ed's treat. How lucky I am to have found such hospitality so far from home. And then he wipes his eye with a handkerchief that has a little panda bear on it. And, I'm assuming that this is meant to be like the connection between him and the little girl, but it could just be that like this country of Xing that's like supposed to be their animal or something. I don't know. But yeah. And they're talking to him for a little while, not really meshing super well because this guy is trying to pull one over and Ed is already prickly enough. And they're asking, why would you take the route through the desert? And he says, I wanted to visit the ruins of Xerxes. And Ed knows what those are. And he says, I've heard there's next to nothing there. And Ling says, I wanted to see for myself. And I'm like, okay, it feels like that's significant in some way, but I don't think that we've heard of these ruins before. But he mentions alchemy here. And I believe it's what you here in this country call alchemy. So yeah, that's why I got the impression that it was the same thing, because he kind of says it is, but it's like evidently not quite the same thing. And Ed is like, oh, that's cool. I would love to learn more about how that works. Why don't you tell us about it? And this guy is like, oh, I'm not one of them. I'm not an alchemist. What do you call the ones that do it? Sorry guys. But yeah, they're talking about like the way that things moved into the military where Ed is from, and a branch of alchemy that's medically specialized. I'm curious too. And he asks them if they're alchemists. And then asks about the Philosopher's Stone. And both of them are like immediately on their guard and do not want to tell him anything. And I thought that was sort of alchestrist. That's what he says. Okay. That's so hard. That's really hard, guys. Alchestrist. Ooh, I hate that. That's going to be a fucking problem. I can tell. But yeah, the fact that they just don't want to tell him anything, I feel like that's more suspicious. Like, give him some basic shit. You don't have to tell him anything real even. You could lie. But I think you should probably tell the truth and just have it be as completely vague as possible. He says, I'm very eager to find it. Do you know anything about it? And they both just go, no, we can't help you, and start to get up and leave. And I was like, that feels like you're just drawing attention and making it really clear that you're into some shit. You've got to be like a little bit smoother about it and be like, oh, I've heard about that, but it's a legend, isn't it? And just kind of be like, I am so clueless about it that I don't even think it's a real thing, and ask all of the all the dumb bitch questions that it makes it clear that you know, but they play it off as play it off is the wrong word, because play it off is used to signify that somebody was being like soups cash about a thing, and they are not soups cash about this at all. They are extremely obvious about the fact that he like touched a nerve here and got to something that they don't want to talk about. So as they get up to walk away, he says, oh, you wouldn't be lying to me, would you? And then they turn around and there is somebody holding a knife to Ed's throat. And there is some dude holding a sword under Al's armpit into his armor, where if he were a person, you could definitely kill him from there. Go up through the armpit into the heart. And Ling is like, oh yeah, I just want to achieve immortality real quick. That's the only reason I want to do this. So what follows is a very, very long fight scene. And it is honestly okay, so show of hands, who else knew right away that the one that Ed was fighting was a girl? Because I felt like it was pretty obvious, and I can't put my finger on why. The only reason I think that it was so obvious is because, one, they have the mask on, which is like kind of a giveaway that's used a lot if somebody's like wearing a full, covering, that there's going to be some big surprise. And often it's, oh my God, a woman. And the other thing is the guy who's fighting with Al has like this massive bushy mustache and gray hair. And there is nothing about the person that is fighting Ed that we can see distinguishing about their features, except eventually the camera sort of zooms in on their eye and we see that it's sort of like got a heavy liner on the top. And even that doesn't really count as a giveaway, because sometimes the male characters are drawn in such a way as well. But long story short, these two get their asses handed to them, like completely wrecked. And I really enjoy how at one point later on, Ed is fighting the girl and he like lands a hit and actually says out loud, hey, I landed one, because just the fact that he is doing so badly that he makes one hit and he's like verbally celebrating, that means that you are not doing super well. That was so funny to me. I was like, man, this must not be going well. And he's also, at one point, guys, he's chasing after her because they're like running through town at this point, fighting each other. And he's chasing after her. And they slide down this series of like huge pipes that I think are meant to be like for the like sewage system for the city or something. And as they're sliding down, Ed just grabs up a bunch of metal off of one of the pipes, leaving a like 6-foot 3-inch wide gash in the pipe. And I was just like, sir, you have absolutely ruined their water supply. Shit is going to be all fucked up now. And I was so happy later on somebody comes up to them and is like, hey, you fucked our entire city up, so somebody's going to have to pay to repair all of this. And it seems like Ed's probably going to have to go back and like put that metal back on that pipe because he just really screwed that shit up. I'm just saying, Ed, you just don't think sometimes. That's all I'm saying. So this fight goes on for a while, and he notices eventually that this fighter is not losing their cool at all unless he insults Ling. And anytime that he says something about like, oh, this fucking guy with his stupid eyes, or, you know, he says something about like, wow, he must be pretty pathetic if he needs like 2 flunkies or something like this. And this person is clearly very protective of Ling. And I was like, oh, okay. So also probably a girl, because they are very like into Ling in some way, or just really loyal. But I'm going to go with like into him. I'm going to go with that because that tends to be like the thing that they do. I also love when he says something about like his eyes. Her attack is eyes focused, and she goes straight in with the 2 fingers like she's a fucking like one of the 3 Stooges. I was truly surprised by that. That felt very direct in a way that was like a little silly, but I wasn't mad at it. And long story short, he winds up pulling her mask off and being like, a girl? And she pulls a grenade out, throws the grenade at him. And on the other side, where Al is fighting, Panini shows up and she's got that cannon in her knee. So everybody's just fucking lighting the place up. Everybody needs to calm the fuck down. You cannot be out here starting street brawls and then escalating to fucking pyrotechnics. Okay? Like, it's considered poor form to pull a knife during a street fight. And you guys are out here with fucking cannons and grenades. Stop it. No. You just, all of you need to get a hold of yourselves. This is ridiculous. My God. Have some fucking class here, people. So, like I said, she drops this grenade and she comes in trying to see what kind of damage she did. And there's an arm sticking up. Not a human arm, a automail arm. And she comes over and she picks it up and it's not attached to anything. And she's looking around like, what? And then all of a sudden, this piece of rope loops around her waist and scoops her up. It was a trap that he set to catch her. And they wind up like having them in their clutches for just a second. And then the townsfolk show up and are basically like, hey guys, what the fuck? And in the midst of Ed arguing with the townsfolk, her and Ling and the other guy whose name I don't remember, they get away. But it's not like they even go very far because this crew winds up catching up with them and figuring out what's going on with them a little bit later. I love Ling. He's like, wow, you guys put up a pretty good fight. If we like threw in together, you could help me take over this country. And I was just like, that is, sir, nobody knows how to approach fucking communication here. What do you say? So yeah, moving on from the moment when they all get landed with the bill for taking care of the entire town. Ling, I think he's at the automail shop that Winry is apprenticing in, right? I think. Because they go back there. Yeah, Garfield Atelier. And I love when he waves to Ed. Ed just runs up and smashes him over the head with his own automail arm. That was unexpected and very funny. Meanwhile, Winry's boss is just sitting there with a cup of tea observing, just watching this entire thing. Ed is so angry. So he says, the girl's name is Lan Fan. The old man is called Fu. Their family has served mine for generations, and they're quite good at what they do. And Ed zeroes right in on the fact that he was trying to mooch off of them, but can afford like a couple of personal servants. And this is when he says, well, I am the emperor's son after all. And this was when I was like, oh yeah, you expecting everybody else to take care of everything for you. I guess that would work with being the emperor's son. And I love that Ed and Al realize that he's a prince and then burst out laughing. And he thinks that they're going to be like impressed. But instead, the image that they have in their head of him as a prince, first, the palace they're imagining looks like the Taj Mahal. There's like a white horse with a saddle with a big star on it that's like one step away from being an actual unicorn. And then the prince in the foreground is wearing like those puffy pantaloons that like King Henry VIII would wear, and like one of those high collars. And the two of them just fall out cracking up. And Ling is just like, that was unexpected. And they're just like, yeah, we just didn't see that coming since you're such a fucking mooch. So this is when he tells them about how many sons and daughters the emperor has. And Al, astutely, is like, oh yeah, that sounds like it's a real nightmare when it comes to figuring out who's going to ascend the throne. And Ling is like, you are correct. And he is beginning to fail in health. And now we're all starting to try and make ourselves like distinguished in his eyes somehow in order to stand out and perhaps be selected. I guess it's not just according to age. And this is why he is looking for the Philosopher's Stone, because he is hoping that this is going to bring him some favor. Now, the thing is, he wants, like, he's presenting it like, I'm going to go home and show my dad that I have the secret of immortality. But what he said earlier was, I want to become immortal. So I kind of think that this isn't what, like, his actual motivation is just, I want to take over my dad's throne, not I want to, like, you know, gain favor. I think he's presenting this as like more innocent and sort of less threatening than it actually is to me. I'm just a guess, because Ling, he's shady. Like, come on, this guy is just straight up like full of lies. Look at him. So when Ed says he won't help, Ling like wraps his arms around him and is like, then I guess I'll just have to stay with you until you tell me. And I'm like, Lin, I don't know what you're feeling here with the relationship between you two, but I don't know that this is going to go the way you think. So this is when Winry comes back, and she sees Ed holding his arm up because he's beating Ling with it again. And she just zeroes in on his destroyed arm and just loses her absolute shit all over again. Ling stands off to the side, smiling in delight as the two of them fight and tools go flying all over the place. And up on the roof, Ling is with his, like, you know, servants, Fu and what is her name? Fanlan? Shit. I can't remember. But Fu says that you shouldn't have to bow to somebody who's so far beneath you. And he says the fate of 500,000 Yao clansmen rides on this. We can't worry so much about appearances. Which, you know, I'm assuming that he's thinking like he's going to save these people. We don't know what's going on over there. You know, like, again, he's keeping a lot under his hat, obviously. So that, like, saying it that way makes it sound like it's a little bit more altruistic than it sounded to me. But it could also be just like visions of grandeur. Like, he really thinks that he's going to do something that maybe he can't or won't. And I will say, though, I appreciate him being like, I will set my pride aside in favor of taking care of these people, which that sounds good. It sounds like the kind of attitude that you want a leader to have. So I don't know. Lan Fan. Thank you, Candace. So Winry begins repairing Ed yet again. And she's like, where are you going to go next to break this shit? And he's like, why do you assume that? And I'm like, Ed, why does she assume that? There has not been an instance that you have not come to see her because you're broken. That's like the whole thing. And he announces they're going back to Central, and she says that she wants to come. And we have this moment of her saying she wants to see the Hughes family again. And I was just like, oh, right. Nobody knows. Fucking Christ. And then she asks her boss if she can go. And they have her boss be this like extremely effeminate, but like he's also extremely jacked dude who's wearing like lipstick. And he's got his like pinky up in this way that I'm like, that's not a thing that anybody does. But yeah, he's like, you can take some time off if you need it. And then when she like clutches his hand and says thank you, he does this little like of course honey kind of face. And I was just like, I would kind of like more of this dude. Why isn't he like, this is the first time he's spoken this entire episode, and that's it. That's all he says, and that's all we see of him. And I was kind of like, well, he seems kind of fun. Why is he in the background? I like that. So they agree that they're going to go, and then Ling drops by in the background through the window and is like, oh, that sounds perfect. And Ed just yells, I told you you can't come. But, I mean, he can just buy a ticket on the same train as you, and I don't really feel like there's a whole lot that you can do about that. So, Ed just tries to fight the inevitable in a lot of ways. So, this is when we go back to, like, the cart that Scar is riding in. And, what is his name? I keep wanting to say Yoshi. What? You guys just told me what it is, too. He asks Scar what his name is, and is just kind of like, I realize that, like, we've been hanging out a lot, actually, and I don't even know what your name is. I'd love it if you'd tell me. And Scar says, Ishvalan names are sacred, and Ishvalan people take great pride in speaking them aloud because they're gifts from God. Yoki, thank you. I was so close. Fuck. And Yoki says, your name must be a special one indeed. And Scar says, I have renounced my Ishvalan name. Now go! Keep moving. And he just squeezes a couple of walnuts in his hand and cracks them. I mean, does he just like carry those around so that he can make a point? Is that a bit? I guess it's a pretty cheap bit. You could just carry a pocket full of walnuts, and every time you want to threaten somebody, just be like, look at me crush these walnuts. You want to fuck with this? But he says, I'm walking down the path of no return, so I will leave behind me every gift I have received from God. Which, considering the fact that he was, like, sort of treating this entire mission of killing state alchemists as a mission from God, like you have spat in the face of what is supposed to be, the gift of alchemy. I find it a little bit puzzling that now he's saying that he's like leaving that path. And I don't know if that has to do with him letting Yoki live when he would normally kill him. But I was just a little bit puzzled by that. I had a moment of just kind of like, wait, I thought you felt like you were representing God out there, but now you're saying you are completely divorced from God to the point that you're not even going to use the name that's associated with your God, which surprised me. But that's how the episode ends, is the two of them just like riding down the road in the dark, and little what's-her-face is in the back laying down with her tiny panda asleep. And honestly, guys, I don't think I've ever wanted a pet as bad as I wanted that tiny little panda. That is like the best. I'm trying to think of what could come close, and I feel like a guinea pig in terms of like the size and shape is probably the closest thing you're going to get. But guinea pigs don't have very soft fur. They have kind of like hair. And I feel like I would really want fur, you know. You could get a hamster, but they're not quite big enough. I just feel like around that size, this is why people go for like teacup pigs and stuff, because they're around like a real small sort of size as well, but they're not really that soft, I wouldn't think either. I'm just brainstorming here, guys. If you guys have an idea of how I can sort of recreate this experience in real life, I'm open to it. Because, you know, my cats aren't going to last forever. Got to make plans, got to figure things out. I have to get Owen on board with a hamster or a gerbil, maybe. Yeah, what's the difference between a gerbil and a guinea pig? And what I'm saying is, I have to lay the groundwork to get him to accept that this is what I'm going to want to do. Because if I just try and spring it on him, he won't go for it. And probably I should get him to rewatch this episode and any of the ones that she's in so that he can start to be like, oh, that panda. And I'll be like, it's funny you mentioned that. I found this ad for a guinea pig. So anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me and talking with me about guinea pigs. And I hope you're enjoying the coverage. Thank you again, Max, for commissioning this. And I'll see you again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.